Hello there, everyone. Hopefully, everybody's having a good day today. This is going to be episode 13. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Lori. I am a certified life coach that is specializing in relationships, um, career goals or career growth, and goals. I had actually a client that I was working with yesterday, and I had her take the attachment style because she came in stating that she didn't want to get attached to anyone anymore because she felt that it only destroys her in the end. And she found that her attachment style is very different from the attachment style that her significant other that she was seeing would disappear, and it seems that he has a fearful avoidant attachment style. And I had to explain to her, me having that fearful avoidant attachment style, it's very unfair to those that try to get close to us, especially because we don't know how to do things healthy. Of course, I've been practicing, trying to have healthy relationships. This is why I went into certification on this because of my own experience. But let's first go into what a fearful avoidant attachment style is. First of all, we did discuss this in another podcast, but in this certain situation, when I was doing coaching with her, this is honestly what I went over with her to try to make her understand that it's not something that she's doing, it's something that's built within him. Because honestly, the relationships, we tend with this attachment style. I only laugh because it's kind of embarrassing, to tell you the truth, and it's just kind of a nervous reaction to laugh. But in relationships, when you're with us and we get triggered, we confuse the heck out of you guys. Um, it's not something personal. It's literally something that's happening in my brain due to my attachment styles, because that is how I was wired, being at a young age. Being this type of an avoidant, I am at times emotionally unavailable. I do crave closeness, but it really terrifies me because when it really comes down to real intimacy or vulnerability or accountability, I get so scared that I risk, I think, oh no, I'm going to be hurt or I'm going to be exposed to my feelings. When things get a little too intense or too emotional or too real, I tend to pull away. And it's not because I don't care, but that's just a coping mechanism that I do to distance myself. Silence just feels a little safer than dealing with these emotions. And, I know that when time starts to pass, I start to feel safe again. And that's times where I will reach out because I want to kind of test the waters before. And honestly, it's not really healthy and it's not good for deep connection. I mean, it's just really trying to control the situation, and it's not something, once again, that's against you. And this is why my husband made me take therapy the first 2 years, because he couldn't understand this pull and push relationship that I was doing at the time. And I had to learn why I was doing this and why I was doing this push and pull thing, because that's what I was familiar with. And I didn't want to take responsibility for it at that time. Um, it's very comforting to know that people are still there. Um, I didn't want to really address my behavior. I didn't really want to apologize for my behavior. I It was strange because Commitment actually scared me. It terrified me. I was like half in, half out. And this was actually triggered in my first marriage, where I always felt it was easier to be emotionally unavailable because I had control of that. Since I know that I didn't have control of others, that's where I had control of. So was I being selfish and unfair? Yes, yes, it is. But it, once again, like I told my client, it's not personal. It really isn't personal. We know that, these people, like at the time, my husband, I knew he was great. I knew he was great. I knew he was very forgiving. I knew he was very patient. But I was the one that was struggling with this fearful avoidant attachment style that was being triggered at the time. And it's so confusing because I know with those that we have relationships with, we you guys enjoy, consistency, you guys enjoy clarity. We tend to avoid that. I have gotten better. That's one thing I will tell you, that I have been working on this, and I've gotten better at trying to express myself. Sometimes I remember Juan telling me I made no sense, like no sense at all. But learning, he had to learn too that it wasn't about him not being enough. It was about me not being equipped to love him the right way. And it was hard to swallow that because I knew that I'm the one that had a lot of inconsistency and I didn't know how to love healthy. Um, I did have very strong emotions. Like I told my client, I had very strong emotions for my husband, but I didn't know how to stay connected. I didn't know how to be accountable. I didn't know how to communicate, with conflict. This is why my podcasts are very specific on different topics, because these are things that I was doing at a younger age that I had to learn and take accountability for my actions of what I was doing. Like I would tell my client, it's it's unfair because we show up when it's easy, but then we pull away when it's hard. We do a lot of breadcrumbing emotionally, which, like I said, it's not right. We avoid real conversations, because having feelings is it's really scary, and it really threatens my sense of control. And I'm talking more back then when I first got married. Since then, it's been about 6, 7 years that I've become more aware of what I'm doing. But either way, it was wrong because I wasn't emotionally really available. And loving someone isn't really about how I felt in the heart. It was about, am I going to allow this person inside of who I really am? Am I going to allow this person to understand really what I'm going through? Are we capable of changing? Yes, we are. A lot of people see us as being fearful avoidant. They really see us as being evil. They see us as trying to have control, and we're manipulative. They call us very emotionally immature. And all those things, yes, okay, I understand. I understand where they're coming from. But us that try to change it, and us that try to work at trying to see others' viewpoints, it's, it's a life-changing experience. It really is. It's it's a very life-changing experience. I had to break patterns that I was so used to emotionally. It got to the point that I was facing consequences for my actions. So with my husband, when I was pulling away, the consequence was, he would pull away too, and it wasn't what I was really wanting at the time. It's very discomforting. At that time, it was very hard to apologize. Ooh, it was very hard to apologize. Now it's easier because I've been working at it, but back then, oh my goodness, no, I could never apologize. I would never stay in conflict. When there was conflict, I would just disappear. I wouldn't even talk about it. Now I really do try to talk about when there's conflict if I'm in a relationship. I could not name my feelings. Oh my goodness, no. There was no way I was going to name my feelings. I just suppressed those feelings for years. I had a lot of betrayal trauma in my first marriage, where I always thought that loyalty was the number one thing in relationships. And when I was betrayed, that really did a huge trigger on me. Um, it was hard for me to tolerate closeness because then I felt like trapped. Um, and like I said, like I told my client, after I was describing all this to her, she was telling me that's exactly what he does. That's exactly what he does. And I get it. And I know we're frustrating. I know we are. And we are those type that just kind of date on the surface level. We try to not get connected because we convince ourselves that we're fine. We convince ourselves like, okay, you know what? We can't let anybody in. But there comes a time where we actually get to the point that we realize, like for instance, with my husband, I realized I missed him. Even though we were married, I missed that intimacy. I missed that speaking. I know that I was painfully feeling this loneliness, but I was doing this. He wasn't. I was the one that was, had these attachment wounds that were so deep. And I had to learn how to rewire them emotionally. Like I had to really learn coping patterns. And it took so much time. It took 2 years of therapy. And I had to really show humility. I really had to swallow a lot of my pride. But one thing I did tell my client that maybe might help many of you that might be with a fearful avoidant, that I had to learn, and it's coming from me, somebody that is that person. It's not your job for you to or be responsible to help us wake up and change our pattern. It's not your job. It's not your responsibility. That's something that we have to work on. That's something that we have to decide if we want to grow. We have to decide that if we want change. You can love us as hard as you can. You can give us the world, but at the end, it's up to us. It's up to us to really allow ourselves to open up and to work at it. And I think that that's what a lot of people try to do with fearful avoidance when you're dating one, is that you try to give us more when it's not really you that's the issue. It's us that's the issue. Um, I think the best way that I have learned is expressing myself, that I had to be okay with telling my husband at the time that I know that I've been, distant, but closeness just scares me. It really scares me, and it hurts me that people I care about, you know, can disappear in a second. And that was because of my being younger, but was triggered in my first marriage. I had to stop having excuses. I had to own up to what I was doing. There is no real change, is only going to happen when we want to change. So you guys can be so patient with us, but in the end, a therapist is the only one that's really going to help us to really cope with this, and really the self-awareness, and we have to get tired of it. I think that what helped a lot in my marriage with my husband, who passed away in 2021, was that I had to learn to say things when I started to kind of disappear or push away. I had to learn to tell him, I know that I'm disappearing or I'm not giving you my all. and it was wrong, but I want to talk about it and why I did that. And he would sit down and he would listen to what I had to say and never judge me. Or I would tell him a lot of times, I'm afraid of getting too close because, like, I don't want to get hurt. And then, but I also didn't want to lose him either. And he would sit down and we would talk about it. But like I said, you're not going to be able to change a fearful avoidant. We got to change on our own. It's not nothing personal. And I hope with this client that, she kind of felt a little better knowing that it's not something she was doing. It's just something that we tend to do because that's a coping mechanism that we have learned through the years. They're actually like survival mechanisms, to tell you the truth, that we have been using for so long. And I did this with my first 2 marriages. I learned how to have these survival mechanisms because feelings, you avoided your feelings, and that's what you did in childhood. Like, we avoided our feelings in childhood. We had to cope and learn how to survive on our own. Change really made me very nervous in my nervous system. That closeness and that conflict, just, I would run away. Like, I would totally run away. I had to literally rewire my attachment pattern that I had in my mind for so long. The first thing I had to do was I had to be aware of it. And then I would I would be aware of it, but then I would go back to being avoiding, and then I would test safer new behaviors. Testing meaning, like, I would test my husband at the time to see, okay, is he going to leave? Is he not going to leave? Because that's what I was used to. When you get close to someone, they leave you. I would relapse into like old patterns when I was, under stress. But slowly, learning healthier patterns over time. Yes, that's why I tell you all, it is possible to rewire your brain. It really is. It's possible to learn new patterns if you really want to. It's really up to us. But just know that if you are dating someone that's a fearful avoidant, just know that we really do care about you. And we do really want that peace with you. But once again, there's nothing that you're going to be able to do. That's something that we have to work on. Now, if you have a fearful avoidant, for instance, like me, where my husband was patient enough for 2 years to take me to therapy when I was, really ready. That to me was so helpful, and him not judging me. So yeah, my husband was pretty awesome. He was really, really patient with me, and he took therapy with me to see, what were my thinking patterns and what were my triggers and what made me terrified and why would I push him away, the reason why I would push him away, why I was feeling panicky, why I would test the boundaries. And honestly, it was just all about being afraid of, being hurt, really. It was just being afraid of that. It was being afraid of losing something good, because nothing in my brain, in my brain pattern, I learned that when you have something good, it's not going to last. And I had to really detach that from myself. But hopefully, this kind of helps many of you. It did help my client, and we're going to be going on with attachment styles for her because it seems that she's the anxious type only. So that's why there's a push and pull dynamics that's going on there. But if you guys, I would really advise you to take that attachment style test. It is for free. And that really kind of will help you to understand in your own relationships if you're having trouble to talk about your feelings, talk about what's going on, trying to understand yourself first of all, and then understand your partner. I really would advise you to do that. And if you need to, you can see a therapist. A therapist also works with the coaches, and we make sure that you are headed in the right direction as being your cheerleader. I hope this kind of broadcast. I can't even talk anymore. It's so personal today again. I hope that this podcast has really offered you some insight of what goes on in our mind, that we don't mean to do that. But till next time, guys, have a great week. And if you like this podcast, please subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Thank you. Until next time.